to my channel. Super excited to be sitting down with you guys and to finally be executing an idea for a YouTube video I've had for a really long time. For those who do not know, I am a speech language pathologist by day and a content creator by night, and my dream and my goals is to merge the two. So I wanted to sit down and do a frequently asked questions for those interested in becoming a speech language pathologist. So we're going to go through everything: undergrad, grad school, the job itself. I want this video to be helpful for anyone who is interested in becoming an SLP, and for it to help you in any stage that you're at in your SLP journey. So if you are interested in becoming an SLP, or a speech language pathologist I should say, then I hope you enjoy this video. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and let's keep watching. Okay, so first let's start off by talking about what is an SLP and what is our role. So that is a loaded question, my friend, because SLPs do so much. We treat a variety of communication disorders. So think about speech, language, fluency, how fluent our communication is, all the way up to social language and pragmatics, and this is across the entire lifespan. So it is a very broad but also very specific field to get into, and honestly it is an incredible field to jump into as well if you are interested in becoming an SLP. I think it's a career option that is incredibly stable and reliable, which is really nice, especially just seeing friends or seeing, you know, people around me who apply to jobs and what the application process can be for like corporate America, or, you know, working in higher ed. We are in a really nice, sweet spot as speech language pathologists, because it is super broad. There's a lot of different options for you out there to be an SLP in different settings with different populations. And I did a little bit of research before this just so that I could, you know, tell you some amazing facts about the field as well. So according to the US Bureau of Statistics, our median annual wage is around $79,000, and that was based off of the statistics that they have in May 2021. That's the last time they gathered that data. And our employment is projected to grow up to 21% from 2021 to 2031, which is a lot faster than all occupations. I looked into why that is, and the reasoning is a little sad, but I'm not going to get into it. It does just mean that we have secure jobs, which is really nice, especially when we think about the economy and the recession and all these real life situations that leave people in unstable situations. We as SLPs have a really great job and stability. Another thing that I saw according to the US News and World Report is that our unemployment rate is 1.7%. So you will have a job if you go through your SLP journey. Okay, so let's talk about our frequently asked questions. I am going to be doing this in 3 parts. So we're going to talk about high school to your undergraduate degree. Then we're going to talk about applying to grad school and surviving grad school in part 2. And then we are going to talk about applying to jobs and surviving and thriving at your job. And all these parts are going to be in this one video, if that wasn't clear. Buckle up, grab your popcorn, grab your notebook, take some notes, and let's jump into high school to your undergrad degree. Maybe you're a high schooler, maybe you're not, maybe you're in your undergrad already. So we are going to start off by just mentioning that your educational journey might be linear and it might not. Mine personally was very linear. I knew from high school that I wanted to become a speech language pathologist and followed that through all the way to now, 28-year-old Judy, who is a speech language pathologist, and I didn't take any breaks. I applied immediately to grad school, got in, etc. So mine was really linear, but it doesn't have to be. And I do want to give you guys a reference point as we go through undergrad, because I think it's really important for you to realize the GPA that people have. And I graduated also with a GPA of 3.64 overall. But honestly, what is really important is your GPA in your major courses. So once you start taking courses for speech and language pathology, that is what's really important. And that GPA is something that grad programs will look at more than, say, you bomb your freshman year and don't get a great GPA. You know, it's your first semester out of your parents' house on your own, being a young adult. So say you do that and that happens, it's okay. There's room for mistakes because you haven't jumped into those major courses. Those are just general education courses, right? Now, you might be thinking, Judy, what sort of degree do you need to become an SLP? When I applied, I thought the degree was only called speech language pathology, which is wrong. It can also be called communication disorders. So when you're applying to your undergrad, look for programs that have a communication disorders program or a speech language pathology program for undergrad students. The type of courses that you will be taking as an SLP undergrad include things like phonetics, phonology, introduction to language science, audiology. I had to take an audiometrics class where I had to learn how to do like hearing screenings and read an audiogram, things like that, because it's possible that you work with students who have who are deaf and hard of hearing. Just depending on where you're going to school, you may be up for bilingual courses or like cultural competence courses as well. So that's very important. Hope that you are in a program that is offering that. Like I mentioned earlier, your educational journey might not be linear, and maybe you are an undergrad right now in like nursing or education and you're wondering, okay, I don't want to do this field, I want to be an SLP, what do I do? It really just depends on where you are in your journeys, but it is possible to move on to speech language pathology grad school, to a graduate program in speech language pathology, even if you have a degree in something besides communication disorder. If that is you would have to review your prerequisites for a grad program, see how many you are missing from the degree you already got. And if you're missing a lot or it's just a few, you go from there. And if you are missing a lot, there is something called a post-bac program, which can be like a year program, part-time, I believe, where you are just taking those undergraduate courses and that are specifically for grad school. I had a lot of friends who did this, and it's actually kind of nice because since it's a post-bac degree, those units count. If you work in a school, those units count towards your salary, which jumps you to a next salary level, or step, I should say, at least in the schools, for you to have more units than someone like me who went from undergrad to grad school and then work. I have less units than someone who did complete a post-bac, so I make less money. But it kind of evens out because, you know, you're paying for two programs instead of just one. So just thinking about loan and debt, things like that, it could even out. Or if you're really smart and you had no debt, then, you know, maybe, or, you know, not smart, but fortunate to have no debt from school, then maybe you're just cruising along and have a really nice salary. Get your post-bac, and then after your post-bac, you are able to apply for a grad program. Yeah, like I mentioned, that was not my personal journey, but it is the journey of a lot of people that I am friends with and are current SLPs, because not everyone knows what they want to do, you know, when you're applying to school at 17 years old. Next question I get often is if courses are challenging. So, like I mentioned, you will be taking courses in undergrad for phonetics, intro to language science, audiology, and then in all of those courses as well, you are learning about the anatomy and physiology of what it takes to hear and to speak. These courses are science-based, and so I would say if you are not great at sciences, they might be a little bit more challenging, but it's not impossible. I found my courses pretty challenging, and they did require a lot of studying. Because I knew I wanted to get into grad school, I did my absolute best in my coursework so that I could get a higher GPA in my major courses. So yeah, courses can be challenging. Isn't every college course challenging? Okay, that concludes all of the frequently asked questions I typically get about undergraduate school for speech-language pathology. Let's go ahead and jump to our second part, which is talking about applying to grad school and surviving grad school, because both are equally important. Okay, so the first question I get often is just tips or resources for personal statements. I would say that one resource, or like the biggest resource I had, was having other people read my personal statements, especially someone who has been through the application process. Maybe it's a professor who is on the application committee. I don't know if that's the right way to call it, but we're going to run with it. Maybe it's an advisor that you really trust. Just someone else to read your personal statements is really crucial. And just giving yourself a lot of time. That's a big tip that I would say, is give yourself a lot of time. I started mine in the summer before application season. So for me, I applied in the fall of my last year of undergrad, and so that summer I spent time writing my outline and looking at the personal statement questions across the different schools that I was going to be applying to. So creating some sort of organizational system for yourself where you are able to see the different personal statements that you are going to have to submit for the different schools you want to apply to is very important, so that you just have a lot of time, aren't super stressed out, because you will be applying during the school year, which is hard. Next, let's talk about selecting the school that you want to apply to, and how do you do that? How do you choose a grad program? That is a very good question. So you want to choose a grad program that is going to have something you are interested in, or focuses on things that you are interested in. For me, it was bilingualism. I was really passionate about bilingualism. I wanted to be able to go to a grad program that had that focus. Recommended to choose programs that actually had a bilingual certificate, because then that way, once I get the certificate, then I could possibly be paid more for my bilingual services, which is as it should be. There are also other ways that you can select your schools. Maybe you already know that you would prefer to be a medically based SLP versus educationally based. So that is another way to select the grad programs that you want to apply to. You can also use resources like ASHA Ed Find, which allows you to look up degree programs for undergraduate, master's degree, entry-level doctorates, research doctorates in different states, and you can select different cultural emphasis. You can look at program offerings and select different filters there. So definitely recommend checking out ASHA Ed Find if you are trying to search for the right grad program for you. questions to ask your grad school once you have applied and you're touring and you're excited and you're ready to move, to go somewhere. Make sure to ask what your program will look like. Like, what will those 2 years that you are at that school look like? What does the curriculum look like? What do your clinic hours look like? Some places, they wait for you to jump right into clinic. So you might go to your first semester and still just be taking coursework, and then you start clinic in the next semester. Some places, like I went to San Diego State, we jump into clinic right when we get there. So that first fall, you are already doing your clinic, and taking into consideration what type of person you are, if you are ready to jump into your clinical practice already, or if you would like that time to really gather knowledge and learn and then jump into clinic. That is also another thing to consider. I would just be aware of the kind of support that they are offering. So, see if you are able to build a connection with the faculty that's there, and just read that sort of vibe. And you can also ask, what type of support do you offer your grad students? Or you can also see if there are grad students within their program who are willing to talk to you, and ask them as well, do you feel supported in this program? Because that, at the end of the day, is probably the most important part about a grad program, is being supported, because it is hard. And you want to be somewhere that isn't going to make it harder. They're going to do what they can to make sure you are successful, and that you are able to come out of their program with feeling ready to be a speech language pathologist. And if the program that you're touring isn't giving you that sort of impression, then you should look at other ones, because there are really great programs out there who are very supportive, and who students will say that they feel supported at their program. And that may mean different things to everyone. So whatever that means to you, think about what sort of qualities you want in your educational team to have, so that you do feel supported. Do you want to have open communication? Are you going to want to have someone who you can go to in case of anything? Make sure, if you are watching this and you aren't SLP and you've been through this journey, or you have further insight on this, go ahead and comment down below. Make sure to tell us what sort of questions you asked your grad program when you toured your campus. Next question I've gotten pretty often is materials, or how to prep for grad school. And honestly, you guys, if you're at the point where you completed your undergrad and it's the summer before grad school, just live it up. Have a great summer. Don't worry about what it's going to be like, or how to prepare for the program. You are going to get there, and they are going to tell you what you need to know, and they are going to teach you what you need to know. Then you'll tackle it then. You don't have to do anything to really prepare, I would say, especially because that's what your summer's for. Your summer's for you to fill your cup before you go to grad school, and it's really not about that anymore. No, not to say that grad school won't fill your cup, but you know what I mean. In terms of material, so I was asked laptop versus iPad. I think that's really a personal preference. I would say I prefer a laptop, because you are going to have to be typing out your reports. You will be having to type out your treatment plans, your SOAP notes, etc. I know iPads also have that capability of, adding a keyboard as well. So if you're someone who likes to, write as you're taking notes on some sort of application like GoodNotes or something, then an iPad might be a good option. Most people in my grad program had a laptop, and then maybe there was one person who had an iPad and used their pen to write their notes. So it's really personal preference. I personally preferred my laptop just because a laptop has many more abilities than an iPad does. So just kind of a better investment in my opinion. And essential materials that you may need are sort of binder to keep your material organized. You will have multiple clients your first time in your clinical rotation, so keep having some sort of organizational system, and also just like another binder where you are keeping all your resources that they are giving you. So in grad school, your clinical supervisor might be suggesting for you to use this questionnaire or use this sort of test, this sort of probe, and you're going to want to make copies of those. You're going to want to make copies of those and save them somewhere and organize things by your age group or by your disorder, however, whatever system works for you. You want to start creating that resource binder the moment you step into grad school. So that is an essential material. Toys, tests, things like that, your grad program should have those. That is why you're paying thousands of dollars to go to grad school. They are supposed to supply these things for you, as well as a quality education, right? I also suggest a backpack. You're going to be carrying your books or your notebooks, your computer back and forth from clinic to your house, to whenever you start going out into the community. So making sure you have some sort of good backpack that you will be able to carry that and not hurt yourself with a tote. No totes. Other essential materials, I would say, is to really look at your closet and see what sort of clothes you already own will be considered professional. What that may mean to you is different. It's different across the board. For me, you know, as long as kids are not seeing any anatomy, then we're good. We are professional. But you might have things already in your closet that will work for that. And other basics, you know, that you'll need is like a lunchbox. You are going to be spending a lot of time at school, from classes to preparing for your clinic to clinic days. So making sure you have a good sturdy lunchbox where you can fit all your snacks, all your lunches is crucial. That is definitely an essential material. And, you know, a water bottle that fits in there as well, or fits in your backpack, also crucial, because classes in grad school can be like 3 hours long. So you want to make sure you have a water bottle to keep you hydrated during your classes, your snacks, and a good note-taking system. Before we jump into part 3 of these frequently asked questions for people interested in becoming an SLP, I want to talk about a few more topics under the applying to grad school and surviving grad school frequently asked questions. You may be in the middle of this video thinking, wow, that sounds like a lot. I don't know if I'm able to do that. Or maybe you are already in a place where you're like, doesn't sound like me. I want to take a break, or, you know, whatever it may be. Let's talk about different routes if you are not ready for grad school. It's perfectly okay. Like I said, everyone's educational journey is different. Some might be linear, some might not. And I think taking a break from your undergrad to your graduate program is kind of essential. I feel like it should be recommended, because I think when you're young and obviously not making money, and there's this rush and pressure for you to get there and to get to your full-time job and to not go into more debt, or, you know, whatever it may be. there is just this, or maybe it's an internal pressure, I don't know, but I think that if I could go back, I would take a break. I would take a break from my undergrad to grad school because, like I mentioned, the undergrad courses were hard for me. So I was working really hard in my undergrad, and I was working myself to the bone, just doing everything I possibly could, getting involved in research, getting involved in volunteering, observing other SLPs, on top of the coursework, and I had a job. So there was just this grind that I was in my undergrad, and it's possible that you are as well. You might be in a grind as well in your undergrad career so far too. And if a break sounds nice to you, then, and you're able to do it, then take the break. Because when I went into my grad program and I got back from living it up and having my nice summer, I was hit by this ginormous wall that was like, I don't want to do this. I was so burnt out already, and school had just started. I had just started my grad program, and I feel like if I would have taken a break and just focused on my undergrad, then applied, then maybe I wouldn't have felt so burnt out the moment I reached my grad program. But that's what I did. So if taking a break between your undergrad and grad school is something that you want to do, then I do suggest it. And I know plenty of people who have also done that, and then they get to grad school and they're like, I am refreshed. They were ready to go. I was not ready to go. So take your break if you can. It's definitely possible. I think the only thing is to have a good reason in your personal statement for that break. And you can spin that however you'd like, to be honest. So just keep that in mind. Have a good reason in your personal statements to say why you took the year off. If grad school does not sound like an appealing process or journey for you, that's completely okay, because there is still an option for you if you get your undergrad degree in speech language pathology or communication disorders. You can become a speech language pathologist assistant. So an assistant is not able to do assessments or do any of like the legal paperwork that is attached to students. So that can look different across different settings. For example, in a school, an SLPA cannot write the reports, or they cannot submit progress reports. They can give the SLP they're working with data and their notes, which is obviously highly appreciated, but the person doing that documentation and signing off on that documentation is the SLP. Now, in a private practice, it might be a little bit different. Some SLPAs in private practice are able to submit their own notes themselves, and then I believe they just require an SLP to review those notes and sign off on them. So a little bit less autonomy in your job as an SLPA, but less documentation, and no assessments or report writing, which is really nice. You may help with assessments sometimes, like administering them, but you do not score them or write or report a score. You just administer and say if it's correct or not correct. They do make significantly less. So I believe an SLPA makes around $40,000 a year. And if you remember from the beginning of the video, the median salary for an SLP is around $76,000. Is that what I said? $79,000 a year. So they do make significantly less. I believe that maybe that number has jumped a little bit. I didn't do research on that, but look it up on those other websites I mentioned earlier, like the US News and World Report. See if there's anything on there for median salaries for SLPAs. It is also a great thing to do during your break. If you decide to take a break from your undergrad into when you go to grad school, you can try that route and then trying to apply to grad school later on, so that you just have some income coming in to pay off student loans. Everyone's situation is so different, so just really do what's best for you, and when you're thinking about where you are financially, mentally, emotionally, etc. Let's pause for a little bit of advice before we talk about our last segment. I've been asked often what I wish I knew before grad school and things like what helped me get through grad school. So let's just sit down, sip our tea. Actually, I'm gonna sip my water because your girl's been talking a while. Advice from Judy. I wish I knew that it was okay to make mistakes and that it was okay to not be perfect. I wish I knew that. I wish I could go back and tell little 21-year-old Judy that information, that it's okay, you don't have to be perfect, you can make mistakes. And I also wish I knew to focus a lot more on really learning more of the clinical practice. When I was in grad school, I was also focusing on a research project. So if I could go back and not do that research project and just focus my energy and really intake what I was learning in clinic, I would do that. I would 100% go back and do that instead of thinking I should be focusing on both a research project and clinic and school. That was too much. And what helped me get through grad school was honestly a really good support system. And in grad school, since you are in a smaller program than typical undergraduate courses, that kind of comes with the territory. And, you know, hopefully you are surrounded by good souls, or you are a good soul who will create that support system and create that environment around you by creating study groups, creating really good friendships where you are able to go to each other's houses or go to the library together and learn together, because things are just truly better when you have community. Another thing I wish I knew before grad school, I wish I could go back and tell 21-year-old Judy to keep prioritizing herself no matter what. I know when you're in school, it feels like it has to be the good grade or you have to get this done, that you don't have time to do the things that make you feel good, whatever it may be, working out, eating well, going on a walk, hanging with your friends. It may feel like you don't have the time to do that because of how much your workload is, but I wish I could go back and tell 21-year-old Judy to just trust that there is the time for all those things. And I wish that she didn't stop prioritizing herself, because I did when I was in grad school. I stopped working out. I did my best to continue to eat healthy, but it wasn't the healthiest. And I just felt like, oh no, I have these 5 projects I need to get done. I can't have a social life. I can't go out tonight. I can't, right? And I wish I could go back and tell her that yes, you can. There is plenty of time. Don't worry. That helped me get through grad school, and I hope it helps you get through grad school. Find your community, find your people, especially if you are going out of state. Find your people, find those friends who are going to be there for you, who you're going to be able to learn with, and yeah, that's the advice from me. Okay, we made it to our last and final segment of this video, which is applying to jobs. and thriving in your job as a speech language pathologist. So I mentioned earlier, we have such a low unemployment rate. We make decent money. We are expected to have lots of jobs. So a question I get often is it hard to find a job after grad school? Absolutely not. It might be tricky to find someone who is hiring a clinical fellow, which is what your next step would be after grad school. Your clinical fellowship year is a year after your grad program where you are still being supervised by someone. You have a lot of autonomy, don't get me wrong, but there is someone who is still signing off on your reports. There is still someone who is helping you when there are tough situations. And honestly, we all still are connected with other SLPs. It's such a niche field that you will forever have a support system, but during that clinical fellowship year specifically, you're required to have like 400 hours of supervised clinical hours. At least in California. It might be different if you're in a different state. But finding a job will not be hard, and if you're in a pretty good or decent grad program, you will also have that support from your grad program. Mine helped us by giving us questions that we may be asked during interviews. They prepared us by showing us how to write our resumes, and they basically would send out job applications as well. So a good grad program will prepare you for the workforce as well, because that's what you're paying all that money for, sis. So make sure you're getting that. And that's going back to questions that you should ask your grad programs. Ask that. Ask, how do you prepare your students for the workforce? Thought of that one right now. Finding a job, not hard at all. It's a little bit trickier for the medical side just because, like I said, it might be hard to find someone who is taking a clinical fellow, but it isn't impossible, especially if you're willing to move. There will be some place that might be taking a clinical fellow. Maybe it's not in the current city that you're at, but it's in another city. Next, so now we're in our jobs. We're in our CF year. Picture this. We're in our jobs, we're in our CF year, or we're in our second year. What does work-life balance look like for an SLP? It depends on the type of person you are. It depends on your setting, and it depends on how good you are at advocating for yourself and creating that work-life balance. So my CF year, I used to work from like 8 a.m. up till 6 p.m. and that is not the norm. That is not what you should be doing. You need to create work-life boundaries. Work-life balance depends on you and your setting, and mainly you. Because we all have the power to create boundaries. But will you? Will you not? That's really up to each person. And it does vary by setting. It does vary also by the type of support you will have in your job. And if you are supported and people see the value of SLPs wherever you're working. Because sometimes people don't, and we're overworked and burnt out. And that happens more often than not, sadly. So really asking in your job interviews what sort of support you will have is super important. And I think also as you go through the field, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about yourself and what that looks like for you and your needs, and like what your limits are as well in terms of your work-life balance. Next question for applying to jobs and thriving in your job as an SLP are the pros and cons of working in a school setting. Okay, let's get it started. So we're going to do pros on this side and we're going to do cons on this side. Pros. Summer's off. Need I say more? No, I don't. 2 months off. No other jobs do that. But, just so that you don't think it's all fun and games, it does mean that you have to fit a year's worth of work into 10 months. And it's not even 10 months because we also get winter breaks, Thanksgiving breaks, spring breaks off. So actually most school calendars are like 180 days a year, or a little bit more than that, like between 180 to 190 days of work are fitting a whole year's worth into that amount. Another pro of the schools, I would say, is the schedule. So 8 to 3, sweet spot. Another huge pro of the schools with me, where I'm at right now in this point in time, is also the support system that I have. We have senior SLPs that are available to us for us to communicate with, to ask for help on tough topics or tough situations, access to continuing ed. Again, this is specific to me right now. This may not be the case for everybody, but questions to ask when you are applying to jobs is what sort of continuing ed is available for you. You want to be somewhere that is fostering your growth as a professional, no matter the industry that you're in. Okay? Okay. I think that's all the pros I can think of right now specific to the schools. So let's jump into cons. Con is the amount of paperwork that you have to do when you're in the school. Oh my God. We're writing progress reports, we're writing actual reports, evaluation reports, IEPs. There's just a never-ending list of how much paperwork we have to do. And this also might still be the same. No, this is definitely a school thing. So yeah, the amount of documentation we have to do is hefty and so much work. Huge con of the schools. And then I would say that the next point I'm going to make, it kind of really depends on the type of person you are. In the school setting, you do have to work with teachers and administrators and parents, and it's an IEP team. So it really depends on what type of person you are. If you find that to be a pro or a con, if you're someone who likes to work a little bit more alone and not really have that collaborative aspect, then maybe this is a con. Or you love that collaborative aspect and you get a lot of energy from working with other people and bouncing ideas off with someone else, then it's a pro for you to have that collaborative aspect. Another con I would say for the schools is that you actually don't really know what sort of teammates you will be getting, and what sort of administrator you will be getting. So that is sometimes the tricky part. And I mean, I think it's, like any job, you don't really know the type of people you will be working with. So it's possible that you may not vibe with people. But what is really nice about the schools is that if that is the case, you do have the ability to switch sites. You can let your supervising team know that you would like to switch sites at the end of the year, and it's something that is that they do yearly. So every year we are asked if we want to stay at our site, if we want to release the site and bid for a new one. And that process can look different across different school districts, but that is also a con/pro of the school setting. Last question that I've been asked is just happiness within this field. So feeling burnout and feeling like you're making a mistake going into this field. Listen, I think that most SLPs I know have maybe felt this way. That is a very common feeling, especially because it is hard. It is emotionally taxing. It does take a lot of energy out of you, and it is something that maybe once speaking from personal experience, maybe once you felt like it was like you feel very passionate about it, and now you don't. And honestly, it comes down to our educational system that are bigger than us as the individuals that are creating this cycle of burnout in a lot of SLPs. I think at the end of the day, remembering that this is just a job and it is not solely who you are. I think we wear our SLP badges with so much honor, which I love about our field. But at the end of the day, we are human first. And whatever you may need as a human first is how you will find happiness in this field. At the end of the day, your priority should always be you, and job is like third or fourth. Never first. I've definitely had that feeling of thinking that maybe this isn't something for me anymore. This isn't the career field for me anymore. But I do always get pulled back into it because there are a lot of positives that come with the field of SLP. There is this amazing kind of euphoric feeling that you get when your students make incredible progress or you see the effect of you helping someone, especially as someone who is very empathetic and carries energies that way. When I light up and then my clients or my students light up too, it's like just a magical moment. I get pulled back into the job by the positives and holding on to those very, very tightly. And just remembering that at the end of the day, it's just a job. Okay, you guys, that concludes the end of this video. I am super excited to have finally filmed this and to have created this video with frequently asked questions for anyone interested in becoming a speech language pathologist. So whether you're in high school or undergrad or graduate school, or just a practicing speech language pathologist, I hope this video was helpful and you were able to learn something or be inspired by something I said, whatever stage you're in right now. Feel free to comment any questions or any topics that you found super helpful down below. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, and yeah, just comment away so that I don't get unmotivated to make these videos. Okay. That concludes our videos. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and sending all your questions in. I love you. Bye.